Okay, here we are continuing on with our discussion about Move. So, today we're talking about Move and Osage Avenue. Full trigger warning, we are getting into even more heavy stuff. We will be moving on to discussing the Move bomb booming and the mass unaliving. Before we get into that, we need to lead up to what happened moving into this. So, per our previous video, we talked about the Move 9, how 9 individuals were wrongly convicted. You will see that I had listed all their names, their release dates. They were all but 2 were paroled, 2 unfortunately passed away incarcerated. It's important to note they were paroled, not released and just freed. That's important to note because that means they still had terms and conditions that they had to go ahead and abide by, right? Being on parole. With this, it's also important to note that Debbie Sims, Africa, was pregnant when she went into prison, and she hid that pregnancy. With that, she gave birth to her son, Mike Africa Jr., who is still a Move member to this day. She hid that pregnancy and concealed having her son for about a week. That was the amount of time she was going to have with her baby. She was sentenced 30 to 100 years. She never knew if she was going to get out of prison, which is really sad. She was reunited with her son when he was 39 years old. I'm going to take his book in this post. Now, I don't get commissions. I'm not that big of a creator. I just think it's important that you read it. So, moving on. So the Move house was destroyed in Palatine Village, so Move had to move somewhere. They moved to Osage Avenue. Now, in that 4 years, Move continued to do what they were doing, which was speak out against police brutality. Also, they had a new movement, which was voicing their opinion about their Move members who were wrongly convicted, right? So, they would go on the loudspeaker and voice these opinions. Now, that did cause some contention because Osage Avenue was considered to be a middle class Black neighborhood, and where we run into a little bit of classism, right? With that, the Move movement was already tagged as this disruptive group. So with that, you have Mayor Wilson Good, who was really trying to push this narrative and working with Philadelphia PD, which is weird, right? Considering how they treat the African American community. You would think he would be against that, but he wasn't. So he's pushing this narrative alongside this, letting the African American people in this community know that this is going to drive your property values down. Having the Move movement here because why they're dirty and they cause nuisance, and this is going to really make your property value go down. So it caused division. And I think that's really close to something to really pay attention to, because this happens a lot with activism, where we take a movement and instead of looking at the true nature of the movement and seeing how this is something that's beneficial for us, we instead will look at it as a nuisance because maybe it's not something that's playing right in our face, or we listen to the propaganda that's being told about this movement. I think we saw it a lot with Black Lives Matter, where instead of seeing the true message of Black Lives Matter, there were certain demographics of people or certain areas of people who were told that these people were rioting and causing nuisance. So then it created a divide instead of making unification and powering that movement, right? So the police used these nuisance calls, and the mayor used these nuisance calls to their advantage. And eventually, in 1985, they deemed them a schmerist organization based off of nuisance calls, just noise complaints. That's it. So on May 12th of 1985, they went around house to house and told all the neighbors on Osage Avenue to evacuate. They showed up with 500 police officers for 13 Move members, in which 6 of them were children. I'm going to repeat that again. 500 officers for 13 Move members, 6 of which were children. Okay? And then at 6 a.m. on May 13th, they made an announcement The announcement said, "Attention, move, this is America. You have to abide by the laws of the United States." They read off police warrants, and then they said that they had 15 minutes to evacuate the house. Move instead hid in the basement. Of course, there were 500 police officers with pew-pews outside the house, and of course, if you go back and you watch what happened in 1978, not exactly an inviting invitation, and they knew that this was not to arrest them. So they didn't leave the house. So they started with the tear gas and the water. They flooded the house and put tear gas into the house. When that did not work, then they unloaded their pew-pews. And in 90 minutes, they unloaded 10,000 rounds. They ran out of pew-pew rounds and ended up having to go send someone up to go get more pew-pew rounds. Again, not exactly an open invitation to leave the house. This is a very clear attempt to end Move, not to arrest Move. And then when the pew-pewing stopped, a helicopter flew over the house and dropped the boom. The Move members, according to Ramona, at least Ramona's account, who was the one adult survivor, did not realize that this was a boom. They just heard a big crash, and then they thought the smoke was probably from the smoke bombs or smoke booms until they realized that the house was in fact on fire. Mind you, they had been pouring water into the house, and then at this point is when the fire commissioner said it was not safe to use any of the fire hoses anymore, so they let the fire burn. I will play a clip. The next video I'm going to make is just going to be Ramona speaking about what happened. From her accounts, it's really heartbreaking. They knew there were children inside. They had been monitoring just the same way that Frank Rizzo had been monitoring the movement, the Move's organizations, movements, and the way the members of the house. So they knew there were children in there. They knew this was only 13 members. They knew that half of the members were children. They knew all this, and yet they acted as though this was some type of militia that they were coming against. And they let it burn. When the Move members attempted to exit the house, they made an announcement. They said, "We are coming out. We are coming out with the children." They tried to grab their animals because, again, they saw all life as valuable. And the police started pew-pewing them. They made 2 attempts. The second attempt, only Ramona and Birdie Africa, Birdie was only 13 at the time, were able to exit the house. Ramona Africa was charged with conspiracy to commit schmierism and arson. And served 7 years for that. The remains of the 11 victims showed that they had bullet or pew-pew fragments in their remains, which means that as they were exiting, they were definitely pew-pewed back into the house. Again, trigger warning. This is hard. This definitely should have never happened. This was an end to Move, is what their main goal was. By any means necessary, there was no attempt to arrest. Again, the next video I will play will definitely show all of the bits from first-hand account of what happened. And I think it's important to watch. Thank you.